Hi, it's Mark from Top Local. I'm here with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience, 22-time winners of Best Auto Repair in Vancouver as voted by their customers. And today we're talking about a little hot rod, an Audi S4 2004 that had some engine problems. What was going on with this vehicle, Bernie?
This is a regular client of ours, and he was driving the vehicle. All of a sudden, the engine started running rough, and he brought it straight to us for us to look at. So, yeah, basically, rough running engine happened just suddenly.
So this is an S4, so this is the very hopped up version, or the next to the most hopped up version of an Audi that you can get. So what engine is in this vehicle in 2004?
This one has a V8 engine, 4.2 liter V8 engine, literally shoehorned into the engine compartment. The car is basically an A4. They've managed to cram a V8 engine into it. There are not many things that are easy to repair in this vehicle. Spark plugs are easy to replace. The intake manifold can come on and off easily. There's a few things, but most things are extremely difficult to service on this vehicle.
So what testing and diagnosis did you perform?
So scanned the vehicle computer, found some codes for engine misfire and multiple engine misfires, and then from there it was a matter, based on how it was running, to test the compression. We found that one of the cylinders, and I'll be honest with you, I believe it was number 2, but for some reason the car was here for a long time. So one cylinder had no compression in it. So at that point we realized, okay, it's either the timing chain may have skipped a tooth, if some valves got bent, or something has happened that we've lost compression in that cylinder. The engine's got to come out. We've got to dismantle it and figure out what the next issue is.
So what was involved in repairing the vehicle?
Well, it's an awful lot. As I mentioned, the engine's shoehorned in. Taking the cylinder heads off is impossible. The cylinder heads are the thing that we need to take off to see whether there's piston damage or valve damage or what's caused the no compression. So in order to remove the engine, it's typical on Audis, we need to do a lot of repairs. The front bumper assembly and radiators have to come off. A lot of times you can put it in a service position, but we need to take everything off because we're taking everything out. The engine and transmission and subframe are dropped down below the vehicle. It's many hours of work to remove everything. But once that's done, then the engine and transmission can be separated. Again, quite an elaborate job on this thing. Everything is fitted together so precisely. There's very little room for anything. So that was our next step. We pulled the engine, and then from there proceeded to remove the cylinder heads. Again, extremely involved amount of work to get the heads off, because this engine has a very elaborate timing chain mechanism, which you'll see in some pictures that I'll show you. But once we got the heads off, then we found our problem, and that was one of the valves that dropped slightly due to a broken valve spring. And that's basically what caused our problem. The valve spring broke, the valve dropped and lost compression, and it got slightly bent. Fortunately for the customer, that's all that happened. He brought it in soon enough, and there wasn't any further damage. Let's just go into some pictures right now, because that shows a lot. So this is on the left bank of the engine, second cylinder from the front. You can see a mark here. This is one of the intake valves is tapped, just tapped the piston. Fortunately, no further damage happened. Otherwise, it would have required a complete engine overhaul or replacement. Here's a view of the cylinder heads. These are 5 valve engines. There's 3 intake valves, 2 exhaust valves, nicely circling the spark plug. And this, of course, was the valve that had the broken spring. So as part of the repair, we sent the vehicle to a machine shop for a full cylinder head overhaul, and they replaced all the valve springs, because you never know, if one breaks, when's the next one going to go? So that's what we did for that particular part of it. So these are the heads, nicely reconditioned and resurfaced, ready to be installed. So as far as other issues, problematic areas of this engine we can get into next. Timing chains, I mentioned, they're very elaborate, and I'll just show a picture. This is a partial view of the timing chains. These are at the back of the engine, between the engine and transmission. Now, this is only a partial view. And this, when I see these pictures, actually, we'll just cut to the full view, because it's really mind-blowing. This is the timing chain assembly on this vehicle. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 timing chains, just an array of guides, tensioners on each chain, and guide failure is very common on these engines, and so hence timing chain failures. Now, on this engine, we replaced all the guides and the tensioners. The actual chains themselves don't tend to wear, but the guides do, and once they fail, they're plastic pieces. They eventually chip or break and cause a timing chain failure. So you can see, if you just take a moment, I'll just leave this picture up for a moment, just look at all the things that are driven. So this is the crankshaft here, which drives this assembly here. This is an accessory drive assembly, and I'll show you a view of what that drives afterwards. It drives the air conditioning compressor from this unit here. So this is, again, exceptionally complicated. And when I look at it, I go, just put an electric motor in. I mean, it's just, like one rotating shaft versus like these zillions of pieces. I mean, it's amazing how well this works, but there's just so many moving parts to go wrong. Anyway, so this is a common problematic area on this engine, the timing chain. And, if you do have one of these with a V8, they will give you a problem at some point in time.
Yeah, that's a lot of plastic with a lot of friction and a lot of heat on it.
It really is. And, when people, don't change their oil regularly, get kind of lazy, it's just, you're just asking for trouble. Even if you do all your oil changes on time, there'll probably still be a problem that develops just because of the type of engine. But anything you can do to keep it lasting longer is so critical and so important. So, skimping on oil changes will wear these plastic bits and pieces out way faster. So it's just so important to do them on time or earlier. So a couple other issues we found with this engine. As we took it apart, we noted a bit of fluid seepage coming out between a couple of seals. So this is a view of the front of the engine reassembled. And you can see here, there's a casing here. There's a lower oil pan casing. Again, it's like exceptionally complicated machinery. Casing here, casing there. This goes all the way around. This is basically the main engine bearing casing. What we found, looking at the side of the engine, I don't have a picture, a before picture, but there was you could see some coolant seepage, very minimal, but nonetheless, this engine was out. It was time to it was either do it properly or with, great extra expense. But at a later date, you have to pull everything back out that we already pulled out to do this. So it made much more sense to tackle this. So here's a view, by the way, I mentioned the accessory drive from the timing chain. This is the air conditioning compressor, which is driven by a shaft from the timing chain with a nice little CV type joint coupling it. So again, like more complexity. And here's the bottom of our engine. So this is before we remove the main bearing case. So you can see some seals here that were leaking. And then if we look further down into the engine, this is what the main bearing case cover off. Again, you can see more O-rings and seals. There's one here, one here, one here. You can see the seals kind of starting to fester, bubble. So these were all replaced, and a lot of extra labor and work. There's special sealant around all these other areas, and then the O-rings, of course, need to be replaced. This is a closer view of the upper case. This is the main bearing case, I guess you'd call it. And again, a number of seals here. I've just put arrows pointing to all of these seals and O-rings. All places for leaks to happen, and they were all starting to leak. So in 2004, this vehicle is now 16 years old. So this is the kind of time where all these things start to go and leak. And I think that pretty much concludes the picture show.
Okay, this sounds like an enormous job. And with all that time, it's going to be expensive. So was it worth doing it on this car?
Well, the owner likes the car. He loves his vehicle. So for him, it was worth it. I don't know for everybody whether it is. It really depends on how much you like the car. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, how you value the car. Some people are really about, hey, this car is worth X amount of dollars, and I'm not spending any more than that, or I'm not spending half the value of the car. People have their formulas. Other people are like, whatever, I love this car. I don't care what it costs to fix it. So it wasn't that he didn't care, but, he was committed to fixing this one.
And how did the Audi run after all this repairing work was done?
Yeah, really awesome. Yeah, ran really well. Nice smooth running machine, and should be, fingers crossed, there should be no fluid leaks, and certainly from any of the parts that we replaced and resealed, those are all things that are good preventative measures and maintenance for the future.
And a lot of power from a normally aspirated engine, but a relatively huge engine in a small vehicle, basically.
It is. And I mean, it's a beautiful engine. You can see the 5 valves, the valve timing here. I mean, it's really well built. It's only a 4.2 liter, which is not that big, but it's still, compared to the normal 2-liter turbo that would come in the car. It's a really nice instant response power machine. It's really fun to drive. And all-wheel drive in a wagon. You can haul your kids around and, have a nice little sports car and throw some bikes on the roof. It's a practical sports machine.
So is this, after all that's said and done, is this a vehicle you would recommend for someone to buy?
Well, I'd say with a great deal of caution. One thing I was going to mention, is that in the same week that this customer came in, we had another client who had just bought one of these cars, loved the car. He just bought one and came and had it towed in. He was on a road trip and the engine basically conked out on him. Towed it in, we looked at it, and I think the same thing happened to his engine, only he was probably going at highway speeds. And it just, as far as we got with the diagnostic, we pulled one spark plug out of a cylinder and the whole electrode on the end was just pounded right off. So I believe what happened for this particular engine is a valve spring probably broke as well, and dropped the valve into the engine and just bent everything up. So For him, there was a little more work involved in terms of replacing it with a used engine was what we came up with, but he chose to have someone else do the work on it. But again, is it worth it? It really depends on the individual. I think if you're going to buy any of these Audi V8s, there's a few cautions to look at. Things like timing chain failure is common. Those timing chain guides fail. Also now, having had 2 vehicles in a week with probable valve spring failures, that looks to be like another common problem as the engine ages. So I think it's something to keep in mind. I think with any car, if you buy anything fancy, just expect that, something or anything could go wrong and it could be expensive to fix. But there's some engines that clearly have a better track record over time and are built more robustly. I think this engine is not quite as tough as it could be, and it's exceptionally complicated. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you love this car, it's your dream, buy it.
If you have an Audi in Vancouver and you need some repairs, or you just want basic maintenance and common sense maintenance procedures and information about what you need to take care of and what you can leave, the guys to call are Pawlik Automotive. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You got to call and book ahead because they're busy. They're always busy. Best shop in Vancouver. Check them out at pawlikautomotive.com, or there's a YouTube channel where we have hundreds of videos on there, Pawlik Auto Repair. And of course, thank you so much for watching and listening. We really appreciate it. Leave us a review. And thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks for watching.